Hello, Exiles! Here for update number 2. As promised, the Pinnacle bosses are dead, and starting right up over there should be kind of the recaps of the fight. Fights naturally went really well. They kind of actually went especially well because I was lucky enough to finish my weapon. Properly finish it. It can still be a little bit better, but this is good. This might be the best version of it I've ever had because A, rune crafting, which I'd completely forgotten about. That's a huge mistake on my part. There's actually, it costs a little bit, but there's like another easy 50% minion damage on the table. Max rolled on the actual essence, hit the +1, and then crafted on because it was an open suffix. It was as easy as it gets. I was very happy for it. I even had my 6-link for it, but I didn't use the 6-link for the videos that you're seeing on the side because I thought that was a little disingenuous for where the build actually is. It still had melee splash in. So brutality was missing, which is 39% more damage. So the build actually should have done it much more quickly. And by this point, I think Eater should already be dead because Eater died very quickly. That was an absolute smackdown. I was very happy with that. Exarch didn't go as well because I was smart, right? I told myself, get your ruby flasks, get an extra life flask, have everything prepared. Remember to get Val Molten Shell because I was still running a normal one, so I have all the tools at my disposal to deal with the meatball phase. And then I didn't do any of that, and on top of that, I just left my minions out while it happened. One of my favorite strategies when it comes to Exarch, if you're playing this build, is to unsocket your Dominating Blow real quick. That resets your Sentinels, which sucks, but quite frankly, that is like, that phase is the bane of our existence. That's just how it is. I wish that wasn't the case. I really wish that wasn't the case. And if I had all my damage, maybe I could have skipped one of those phases, but probably not, because I believe specifically in the quest version, you're always going to get at least 2. You're going to get the easy one, and you're going to get the hard one. In fact, I think the shut up, Tujin. I think the boss actually like becomes immune for a moment at some point in the fight. Either way, I died in the meatball phase, not to anything the boss actually did. The boss pretty much couldn't touch me. Neither could Eater, and that's kind of, what the build is designed to do. It's meant to be tanky, and it does a pretty good job of that. If I had set up for the meatball phase correctly, it would have been great. Another thing I could have done was had Flame Dash instead of Leap Slam for specifically that fight. So many things that would have made that easier, and anyone else who's experienced it, I'm sorry. I had actually forgotten that this build is not great for it. This build does not like Searing Exarch, it does not like Maven. Maven, if you know what you're doing, is much more manageable. Exarch is kind of just a dickhead. I don't like him. All the same, I recorded a couple things just to show how the build kind of performs right now, and here's kind of a recap on where we're at. I do not have Darkness Enthroned yet, believe it or not. I could get it, I believe. I think I'd have to move my resistances around a little bit, which they're in a very good place right now. I clearly have way more than I need. The only thing I'd really be losing is some Chaos, which I'm perfectly fine with that. And if I did that and I put in some gems, I'd have a bit more damage, especially on a well-rolled one. But it wasn't the highest priority. You've already seen the helmet, which now has better Eldritch implicits on it. I'm going with reduced life generation rate instead of any alternatives right now, just because that helps so much in mapping. I actually kind of extremely recommend this because we are hitting a lot. That's part of the build. I did get my amulet. This was, I think, 3 div. It's rather expensive just to get something like this. I got good life roll, some decent resistances, and +1 level of all skill gems. That puts us at 29. I tried really hard, and I would even say the reason why this video is a bit late is because I wanted to get that level 21 Val Domination and have the pure level 30 gem. I didn't get there, unfortunately. Not many people seem to be playing Dominating Blow right now, so it's not like there was a market to pull from, and unfortunately, even though I threw my considerable wealth, which, I mean, like, I have the money to keep trying. Make no mistake, I have the money to keep trying, but there just aren't like enough level 20 Dominating Blows showing up on the market. I have bought many of them, as many as they seem to be legitimately selling, and I'm buying temples to go double corrupt them. I just haven't gotten lucky yet. I think I've done like 6 or 7 now. No, 8 or 9, but it's the way it goes. I did get this ring, which dropped naturally for me, believe it or not. Very nice. That's kind of my energy shield right now. I still have a bit more. I'm not sure where the extra bit is coming from. I have like a tiny bit on my belt here. I don't know where it's all coming from. I have a little more than I want, but I haven't had issues sustaining Everlasting Sacrifice, so I'm not too worried about it. Divine Shield is still being used. I still have these nodes allocated. These are all just really good value, to be perfectly honest. You don't need these long-term. Eventually, with better gear, you definitely replace these. But I have pretty good gear right now. I'm not going to lie. It's all very decent, to say the least. If you're watching any of the videos over there, you're going to notice runs through Expedition just fine, runs through a pretty decently rolled T16. There were some mods in there that were not very easy. I think I made sure there were at least 2 damage mods, and there were at least some defensive mods that didn't help the build. So that's I'm trying to be very genuine with what the build actually can get away with. And mostly, as long as you're not like doing the rippiest, craziest T16 of all time, you can run this through any standard T16, even things that really don't support what the build wants to do, or rather kind of hits the build in very specific places. It does well. We have enough block where additional projectiles isn't that terrifying. Granted, fire breathers challenge that pretty quickly because they are just absurd with more projectiles. Otherwise, though, at the current gear level with everything, I can pretty much farm anything. I could just start blitzing maps. That's really what the build is for, and that's where I'm at currently, is I'm ready to start farming and pushing for Uber, Elder, and Maven. I would dare to say I could probably get both the kills right now if I just went for it, but I want to keep farming. I'm not terribly concerned about it. That will be what's going to be in like the next update video, whether that's the final one or not, I can't be sure. But there's some things I want to try on this build just to see what it's good at. It's been a little difficult to do that because of idols this league. Specifically, I really want to see how the build does in Delve. I'll probably dip my toes into Heist as well, just because those 2 pieces of content this build should be very good for. Delve especially, because we naturally regen a lot, and then Heist, we're just durable enough, right? Heist actually used to be pretty rippy. These days, in modern PoE, I actually don't think it's that bad. It's actually probably, in some leagues even, I would say it's some of the safer content you can run. Let's transition over to the POB. I have updated the weapon with the proper damage, and I've just made a few little changes. I have noticed if I go ahead and get the cluster, or not the cluster jewel, the timeless jewel, and I make that switch, the POB is simulating 4 million DPS right now, which is pretty good. Anytime I can get my DPS total over 4 million, I'm usually rather happy. And I think it'll actually get better than this by like quite a fair margin. With enough investment, because things are not terribly well optimized in the POB. They're just meant to be a guide for how to get there. And so this build is feeling pretty great right now. I did import my actual, oops, this is the wrong one. I did import my actual current character into POB, and some of the stat changes were were pretty great. I noticed that my max hits were like actually quite up there by comparison, because I have a little bit more life right now. I'm still missing a jewel over here. I don't have my darkness enthroned, so maybe I've got a bit more just like generic HP raw survivability scaling. According to POB, my DPS is sitting at about 1.7 million for Pinnacles, or closer to 1.8 really. I'm very happy with that, because I feel like I still have a lot to get. Again, oh, I have a lot more than that. Apparently POB doesn't know how to, that's pretty funny. Okay, I'm actually over 2 million. Nice. Doing that live. I thought it would just put the jewels in correctly all on its own. So yeah, the 2 million DPS for what the budget is, and the budget is not very high. I would say the staff maybe is a little bit lucky, but overall this is probably, let me run through in my head. I'd say well below 10 div, probably in the 6 to 7, maybe 8 range, which that's, I can't be at all upset with that for what the build is doing. I mean, the max hits are just, they're quite there. Yeah, okay, to set the Guardian Pinnacle. They're quite there. And the Fizz max hit, especially over what the POB simulates, is quite a bit higher. And I was expecting that to happen, because I know a lot of things, especially with survivability, I always kind of represent a little weaker than the POB actually suggests. And I do that because if you're a little on the weekend and people follow the guide correctly, they're going to be surprised instead of disappointed. It's very easy to oversell when it comes to all of this, and I don't like to do that. Anyway, as per last time, go ahead and leave comments below. I should be checking back, considering this is late, or rather late already for me. I should be checking back tomorrow. I'll check back a few times tomorrow. I'll check in the morning, I'll check in the evening. And I'll help anyone who's having issues. Currently, for me at least, the build is very strong. So further updates are going to be in much more difficult content. But we're at cruise control, and using where I am currently in the game, I think is a pretty good way for you to like benchmark for yourself. I have Bleed Break Flask, Poison Break Flask, Armor Flask that uses Charge when full, and Masochist on it for the 2 charges. I want to get that a little better for the 3, and then I still have to quality my Quicksilvers, which I just like to have speed, because currently I don't seem to need anything else. I haven't really talked about this yet, but my pantheons are Soul of the Brine King and Garakan, just because it's freeze, chill, and shock fixing. I still need the chill reduction mod from Brine King. And then potentially way down the line, I might pick up these nodes, which kind of lets you fill out your chill and shock effect reduction, and that solves all your problems. It's also another 1% max res, which is just rather nice. Otherwise, upgrades from this point going forward are probably going to be much more expensive. The weapon specifically is kind of an awkward situation. I almost have to make a new one because boots are selling. I almost have to make a new one because it's kind of a Veiled Orb type thing, and if it fills up all the affixes and I miss, that's really bad. But I'm not too worried about that. These are not that hard to make. And while I was initially worried that essences might be expensive this league, they've actually turned out not to be. As you can see, I've still got a bunch of fears left over. And let's see what they're going for right now. 2-1. Which, I mean, that's great. It is probably like, I want to say the Craft of Exile was something like 120 some, maybe 140 some, but yeah, that's not too bad to kind of get your +3 staff going. If you miss the suffixes, that can make things a little bit worse, but general plan is to get all of my prefixes right with an open suffix, craft prefixes cannot be changed, and then hit it with a Veiled Orb, and just, you know, pray that I hit the minion attack speed mod inherently. Alternatively, if I hit just like some attack speed mod, and then I craft minion on afterwards, that's also a big upgrade because then the staff itself will be a lot faster. And it's, I would appreciate having a faster weapon, because the base 1.25 speed is not terribly ideal. As for content and idols, I mean, it really is dealer's choice. I don't think there's anything the build is particularly bad at, but I will say I've had actually quite a bit of success with Delirium, just mirror spawning. Very often I get to 5 or 6 on the first reward type, which I consider that a general success. It does harvest fine, as long as you know what to look for in harvest, because harvest is mean that way. Breach, I would almost say it's a little lacking in, but I feel like if I had a proper Atlas tree, it would do breach well. Thing is, we don't have a proper Atlas tree, so some mechanics I feel like are a lot harder than, and I would normally have called them easy in the past. Incursion's a good example of this. If I'm on a map that slows me down a lot, a difficult incursion can make me feel like I don't have enough time to clear it. And on this build, right, with 2 million DPS and decent clear and moving fast, right, with like perma onslaught and everything, that's crazy to me. That is, I'm absolutely shocked. But it, you know, it's kind of what's going on with the event, and that's fine. And just as kind of a final note before I sign off here, I'm almost wondering if Glimpse Chaos is going to get used. Glimpse Chaos is really good. The problem is Impure Blood is actually really good too. Not having to worry about mana is a very big part of the fixing in the build at this point. So I'm not sure this is as easy to drop as I initially thought. That said, it definitely can be figured out. And if I do figure it out, Glimpse Chaos is going to be better, because I mean, even after I give up the belt, I'm going to have so much excess resistance, this is actually going to be very easy to fit. And that could be a very easy 40% increased maximum life, if not more. And that's kind of everything the build would need to like go to the moon, because we're already at 5.5k, at least my character is, which again, outperformed the POB, not terribly unexpected. Yeah. I'm happy. I hope if you're playing the build, you're enjoying it. If you're looking for a new build, I can recommend this one, especially if your first one didn't work out like you'd hoped. A lot of what's going on in this build is pretty easy to get going. Again, like I would say getting a +2 socket and melee gems, War Staff, Fracture might be getting more expensive. I haven't actually checked, but if you can get that, that's probably the most difficult part of the build. Getting the actual helmet is not too terrible these days, because people who are raw crafting are going to kind of make something like this happen. And then the +1 all skill gems amulet is going to be expensive, but doable, and with recombinating in the game, I could make this a lot better. You know, I could put in the time and the currency to make this a lot better, and I probably will at some point. There's just a lot of places I can go, and I'm at the point where everything's going to cost a lot of money. But I also think the build is strong enough. At the very least, this character smokes Uber Elder, no problem. So until next time, Exiles, have a good one.